job. The next, he could barely get out of bed. That's how ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, can strike.
And tonight, we look at the case of one Midlands ME sufferer, one of around 250,000 people blighted by this debilitating and invisible illness. Sandy Barton has the details.
Paul Gray takes a short stroll near his home in Tamworth, knowing it will wipe him out, not just for the afternoon, but for the next 2 days as well.
A little bit dizzy.
Are you?
Yeah, a bit hot.
He has ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome, which has forced him to give up work and normal life.
Exhaustion like you've never known. Disturbed sleep, you get night sweats, shakes, huge headaches, and your concentration. You forget stuff that you've just listened to, you forget words, and it's constant.
Paul's symptoms began after treatment for an infection last year, but deteriorated until he could barely leave the house. After scores of negative tests and x-rays, he was diagnosed with ME. Experts say quick diagnosis is critical.
For some reason, doctors are less likely to diagnose it in men, and that's a hangover from the perceptions of years gone by that it was a white middle-class woman's illness, when that's strictly not true.
ME can affect anyone of any age or sex. There are thought to be more than 250,000 sufferers in the UK, 60,000 of which will be either house or bedbound. There's no cure and no diagnostic test, and ME is thought to cost £6.4 billion every year.
It's not far, but Paul's walk exhausts him. His legs are burning and wobbly, he's hot and headachy, and he's still got to walk back.
I don't want to think of myself as disabled, although in many respects I suppose I am. Being sort of mostly housebound.
What do you say to people who say that it doesn't exist, there is no such thing as chronic fatigue syndrome?
I've heard it said to me, and it's so frustrating. Ideally, you'd just like, for the people who don't believe it, just to have a day's experience of it, be in my shoes for one day.
Paul's only 37, but he needs to get better to be able to look after his children and get back to work. Until then, he faces the double blow of losing his home as well as his health. Sandy Barton in Tamworth for Central Tonight.
Not pleasant. You're with Tuesday's Central Tonight.